I call Materia Ture.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I suspect this debate has been one of, actually at heart, furious agreement, to be frank, about the need for legislation to manage the issues for those who are being deported from Australia and elsewhere, who need some kind of monitoring for some reason, or the recording of their details with the police. The content of the bill reflects that comparatively well. I think the government have made a mistake in not acknowledging their process failures as effectively as they should. It wouldn't be that difficult to do. To acknowledge that they could have done a better job consulting both other MPs from across the House. And I would know Amy Adams did say that she's the only one that's been working on this issue. Well, my colleague Dave Clendon asked her for a meeting to talk about exactly this in July and was refused. So that's, it's inaccurate, but it's also, and it's unfair, in the sense that if this had been from the start a collaborative effort across the political spectrum and with some of the critical external agencies like the Human Rights Commission, the Law Commission, the Law Society, we would have got a better quality piece of legislation. And the government has a tendency to keep its cards far too close to its chest and to not understand that there are real opportunities for cross-party engagement on these serious issues where we all agree. We all agree we need legislation to deal with the deportees. We all agree that the Australian legislation is disgraceful and a breach of human rights. Everybody thinks that what they're doing is wrong. So why not choose to work on those areas of common ground, as opposed to kind of manufacturing a huge drama in the House over the detail which could have been properly worked out with a decent process. So it's been an interesting debate over the last 24 hours or so. And as a result of the debate, we have made changes to the legislation. So there is my own conversations with Amy Adams lead to a constraining of the information that's going to be required of returning offenders, and I'm pleased for that. I'm pleased that she was seriously considering that at the time. The House has agreed to change the time frame for the review of the law from 2 years to 18 months. That at least gives us a chance of getting a review completed and all changes made before the next election. Again, that's good. No doubt better changes could have been made with more time and with even a short select committee process by which we could have got some external analysis, external review of the legislation. And that's what the Greens have asked for, that even a day's worth of select committee would have been beneficial to find ways to improve the legislation. There is no government department that knows everything, and sometimes you need the practitioners, the people who will put this law into practice every day, to give us their analysis of it, how it will actually affect their work, so that we can make it the best possible legislation. So I think, overall, this is why the Greens are abstaining on this legislation. We understand the need for it. There is broad agreement on the basic purpose, but the details, the law itself, could have been much better if the process had been more collaborative. And it is an example to government that they really need to be rethinking their strategy on some of these big issues. I would say, so the other area now that is left open and could benefit from a more collaborative approach from government is the rehabilitation for offenders. So, as government's own papers on this bill have said, the regulatory impact statement has said, there is a critical connection between reducing the chance of recidivism, so further offending, and the quality of the support that wraps around an offender. Those two things cannot be separated from each other. In this debate over this bill, which is about the monitoring but not the rehabilitation, there's been very little from government, the Minister or other government MPs, about the importance, about what they're going to do to increase services, how they're going to engage better with communities. Kelvin Davis suggested funding for Marae to do this work. It's a great idea. The fact that we know agencies are already saying they are well over their capacity to deal with returning offenders as we speak, and are desperately looking for more support. Often some of those agencies are too afraid to speak out and ask for more support because of their concerns about being politically punished. So when we now actually have this opportunity to set aside the politics around the issue and to have a cross-party working party or a chance to have a conversation directly with the relevant ministers, including the Minister of Social Development and the Minister of Housing, as well as the Minister of Justice, to find out how we can best support the best possible support services and rehabilitation for those who are returning. If there is one way to stop reoffending, it's making sure that offenders have genuine options for making a decent life for themselves when they get back here. We've heard a lot about, particularly from Kelvin Davis, and I do want to acknowledge his efforts and debate in this House. I think he's made some amazing contributions about the stories of the people who will be affected by this bill. And he's quite right that there are people coming who have absolutely nowhere to go when they arrive here. They know no one. There is nobody here for them. And what can we possibly expect for them but the worst outcomes if we don't put in intervention immediately that they arrive? Not a punitive intervention, but one that respects their dignity, gives them choices, provides them with the support they need to take the next steps to build a new life here. And that is something that, again, we all agree on. We all agree that should happen. We all agree how important it is. We all agree that it's critical for public safety. So let's find a way of working together on this. The government's, I'm not sure how to describe it, but the government's, just block about working with the opposition means that they make mistakes, and they make mistakes that they don't suffer. It's not anybody in the government benches. It's not anybody in the government benches who is going to. See, this is exactly the example I'm talking about. They're not listening to a contribution about how we can best work together. They're deciding to just shout. But they aren't the ones who. And this is just the fact. They aren't the ones who are going to be affected. It's the offenders. Here we go again. They're just shouting for no good reason. It's the offenders who will be affected. It is their victims who will be affected. And so we need to make sure that when we're making law about other people, that we recognise how far away we are from those lived experiences and how little we know about what really happens, and therefore make an additional commitment to those people who are directly affected, that we will act in their best interest by putting aside the political arguments and shouting, and actually work on what is the best and most decent policy for New Zealanders. That's why we're in this business. That's why we're in the chamber. Let's see if we can improve on that after this example. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker. I call Dennis O'Rourke.